Oh, how good and oh, how pleasant it is for brothers and for sisters to dwell as one. I shall dwell in God's house, you shall dwell in God's house, we shall dwell in God's house now and always.
Sounds True presents The Spiritual Elder, How to Enjoy the Harvest of a Lifetime, with Rabbi Zalman Schachter-Shalomi. Rabbi Zalman Schachter-Shalomi was born in Poland in 1924 and raised in Vienna, Austria. In 1941, he entered the Lubavitch Yeshiva in Brooklyn, New York, and was ordained as a rabbi in 1947. Rabbi Shakhtar has a Doctor of Hebrew Letters degree from Hebrew Union College and is a professor emeritus at Temple University. An inheritor of the European Hasidic tradition, Rabbi Shakhtar is a leading interpreter of its meaning in a modern context. He's the founder and spiritual leader of the Pnei Or Religious Fellowship, based in Philadelphia. The purpose of the fellowship is to promote Jewish renewal and relate traditional Judaism to modern life. In 1989, Rabbi Shakhtar founded the Spiritual Eldering Project to help elderly people of all faiths find peace within themselves and discover the ultimate meaning in their lives. This presentation was recorded at a national conference on conscious aging, sponsored by the Omega Institute. And now, The Spiritual Elder, How to Enjoy the Harvest of a Lifetime, with Rabbi Zalman Schachter-Shalomi.
So for this privilege of being here with each other together and focusing our awareness to the task of ripening and bearing fruit, of harvesting life, we want to offer thanks. We do this in a special way. We say, Baruch shehechianu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Blessed be the source of life that brings us to this moment. We also are doing something very serious, and so I want to do this with an invocation that we use before Yom Kippur. Al dat hamakom ve'al dat hakahal b'yeshiva shel mala u'v'yeshiva shel mata anu potchin sharei atik yomin l'shem yichud kudshe brichu u'shechintei. In concert with God and in concert with those gathered here, with the consent of those above and those below, those who are yet to live, and those who have lived before. We dedicate this convergence to our life's harvest, to the transpersonal ripening in us, to the healing of the planet, and to the re-emerging of the archetype Atik Yomin, the Ancient of Days, the Cosmic Elder, to life on all dimensions, l'chaim, l'chaim. The theory and the method of spiritual eldering I'd like to unfold and detail out in the workshop later today. For now, I want to share with you the vision of conscious aging as it came to me. Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, deals in tikkun, the repair, the healing of the cosmos. For each thing that needed to be healed in the past, Kabbalah came up with a sacred technology. Now aging needs a tikkun. There are holy sparks that wait to be raised and redeemed. As I followed the promptings of Kabbalah, I turned my introspective gaze at the issue, prayed for divine guidance, and was led to more questions than to answers. And to this vision which I'm about to share. You see, when you live meditatively, introspectively, with prayer and under guidance, you often get marching orders that lead you through territory you don't know. It's that voice that comes through the small window of opportunity and says, do you want to remain stuck in the template, the morphogenetic field of aging, where people thinking of aging would think of decrepitude, senility, dementia, nursing home, warehousing, where the redundant and useless population is put until they're no longer around, or worse, the infirm and the homeless who have no one who to care for them? Do you want the younger people coming behind you to see you as that unbearable burden they have to shoulder along with the crushing national debt? And that voice says, wake up. Now is the time to use your wisdom to reformat the concept, the myth, the template, the archetype, the paradigm, the script with which we have been dealing with aging. Because it needs to be repaired and healed, reshaped and renewed. So it calls on us to put our stuff together. So when we have an ear open to the promptings of the body, to the forebodings of senescence, we hear some messages. You know, those midnight messages, 4 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep? I was looking into the book of Ecclesiastes, and here is how it goes. Then come the creaky days. Years creep up in which one feels like saying, I have no taste for them. For the sunlight darkens in the eyes, dimmed is the light of the moon, and the stars in the vision is patchy like a cloudy sky after the rain. The hands and arms, the guards of the house, begin to tremble, and the legs, like battle-tired soldiers, are unsure in their step. The grinding mills, the teeth are fewer, and the windows of the mind fog up. The lips, the doors that open to the marketplace want to stay closed, and the sounds heard get duller. One's sleep is shallow and easily disturbed by the twitter of a bird. The gates of song get clogged, the back is bent, and the urge to mate is weakened as a person walks to his eternal home. Such after midnight whispers raise questions which can be met with denial. You can avoid them. You can seek oblivion and drink and drug, or you can reach for the resources that have begun to ripen in another part of the inner garden. These resources, this is why I call it spiritual eldering, the fruits of contemplation, of meditation, of God wrestling, of prayer, of mining sacred texts of our tradition for gems of their insight. These fruits were energized by that which is unfolding for us, is being revealed, is being broadcasted over this transpersonal network at this time. And taking hold of the energies of our anxieties, they open for us to see vistas that shine through that small window of opportunity. We are the first generation that tackles these issues of conscious aging on such a massive scale. When Social Security was first designed, our lifespan was seen not to extend the biblical 70. And now, due to nutritional, medical, and economic advancement, our lifespan extends so that we are the largest growing segment of the population. What Ken Dictwald has called the age wave is coming on like a tidal wave. The baby boomers, people who have, remember that phrase, dropped out, tuned in, and turned on, who have experienced the blown mind, the consciousness expanded to cosmic dimensions, who participated in the greening of America, who managed to survive the future shock, to handle the ever-increasing complexity that assails us in world events, in media, and the complex relationships. These people, they are us. Want and need and demand an aging that'll have an answer to the nagging question, how will I spend my last years without them being a drag on me or my loved ones? How will I harvest a life? We used to have a song, a Zionist song that went, Arza Alinu, Arza Alinu, Arza Alinu. We have already plowed, we have already sown seed, but we haven't yet harvested. So how will I come to terms with my mortality? How will I find the goals, the aims, the objects, the tools, the set and the setting that are appropriate for this life phase, the life phase of harvest time, of October, November, December in my lifetime? And here is where I begin to be sad. What will happen to all the experience gained the hard way in the school of life? Will it decay when my biological medium is gone? We all are aware of that awesome alchemy by which our cleverness and our street smarts have been gently transformed and metamorphosed into the philosopher's stone, into wisdom. We can turn aging into saging. Oh, if I only had that wisdom when I was younger. Our life stories haven't yet been uploaded to the hard drive of the planet, to the global brain. We haven't yet poured them back into civilization to help it become more civilized. If we value our experience and the mastery that we have gained, we are sad at the prospect of them being lost. It's like this brittle film of a wonderful movie that has been transferred, that has not been transferred yet to other media. We grieve for the wisdom. So the nagging question is, are you saved? Of course, I mean it in terms of the language of computers, not this fundamentalist street corner preacher. I wish all of us to be saved in writings, in oral history, and most of all in mentoring those who come after us. I wish you to become elders, to become sages, to live like Moses to 120 with all the body functions intact, fully to be able to experience the next adventure, a conscious transit to the wider life. The best way I know about getting saved is mentoring. Mentoring is the natural, the holistic way of transmission. Mentoring is the way in which we make a deposit of our earned life riches into our future account in the World Bank of Consciousness from which we're going to draw in the next incarnation. The chain of mentors makes for a lineage, a tradition. Tradition, tradition. Have we not gained immensely from the wise and gracious mentoring that we received at the hand of the elders? So let me paraphrase the Beatitudes. Blessed are the mentors, for they will be remembered. Their software will continue to operate in us long after they're gone. Thank you. Look, am I not operating on Moses' software, on Abraham's software? But without lifting our awareness, with trusting faith in the process of life, we flinch from thinking about these things. Panicked by our constantly reinforced phobia of death, we get anxious, we close down, we narcotize ourselves. This is the state they call avidya, I don't want to know nothing state, that shuts down the future. We must free those energies bound up in the denial of death, the energies that are kept tied up in censoring and suppressing and in silencing the messages that keep coming up from our ripening and from our slowing down. The costly burden of repeatedly editing out the signals of our mortality weighs us down. It leads to depression. Conscious aging means that you come to terms with your mortality. It takes you past the scared places, and paradoxically, having gone through the scared places, it frees us and lightens our burden. And then there's the other side. When we don't look ahead, we tend to look back. You know, you don't want to look ahead to the future. What do you see? The angel of death at the other end. So you look back, right? What do you see when you look back? The specter of failures, the way in which the same flaw time and time again tripped us up. So without the tools of harvesting life, without contemplative skills sharpened, honed to make for conscious life review, we lock ourselves into a small box, one in which we have cut ourselves off from the flow of time, and we are left with a painfully diminished and anxious present that is bereft of past and future, and even wishes to flee from the here and the now, and to escape into a psychic field that mimics Alzheimer's. By enlarging our awareness, by going to the past, we must go past the barriers put up by our fear. There are many pearls in hidden files that we labeled with the anxious warning, don't look at these things again, they'll only make you feel bad. When we open them with awareness and courage, we are surprised to discover how much we have gained by what we saw as losses. In the context of the subsequent gains, when we get past the anxious moment, we glory in the fallout, the hidden benefits accrued in what we have accounted as painful waste. This is what happens when we recontextualize the so-called failures. This is how we recycle discomfort and turn it into triumph. So we aren't only doing this for ourselves. When you look at the larger picture, you see in history those things that were the lean years, how much we learned and how much we gained in them. But the next generation, reared on punctive moments of television news clips, or the people who don't look farther than the bottom line of the next quarterly report, or the politicians who make decisions based on the latest polls, who look for the fickle, conventional mind claiming to be wisdom. It's the long view, the durative attitude that connects with the sacred archetype of the Ancient of Days. That's why I keep coming back to that. That's the divine place from which that energy comes. Part of an elder's work is to plant trees that will bear fruit. Only after we are gone, part of an elder's work is to care for the world and to think in completion curves of 7 generations. In our scriptures, we read of the 70 elders who constituted the Senate of Moses. The Senate is supposed to consist of a council of seasoned elders. Our present system is certainly not built on such a model. Our current crisis with government leaders and lawmakers reveals that we are not only not satisfied with their performance, we're even more dissatisfied with their models, how they model being in the world. We find that very hard to respect. Our founding fathers thought of the Senate in terms of a forum of elders meeting in council, advising and giving consent, giving to our country the benefit of their seasoned experience. Alas, we have very few models of sagacity in our Senate. We lack good role models. Most of us have only one way to see ourselves, as productive contributors to the marketplace. And when the signs of a more mature, deliberate age, appropriate way, break through to us, we lose our habitual ego center and don't even know who we are and what we have to do. You can't learn it from books. Real stuff can only be learned by attunement with someone who has gained mastery in eldering. Then we can get it right in our guts and in our posture and in our heart and in our mind and feel real and authentic being an elder. See, it's not, you can't proclaim I'm just an elder, you know. I have to feel it's right. I'm there. As we age, as we enter the October, November, and December, we can't afford to be addicted to habits of rushing and conquering, habits that we acquired in earlier phases of life. But when this isn't recognized, and we still try and do it that way, we become depressed. We can't keep up with those in competition with those who are younger, who are in the June, July, August phases of their life. The sannyasins of India, who renounced the world at the completion of their active life as householder and public citizen, who took to the woods, to the ashram, to the hermitage, to live the life of a sage. That was a model, not a model for us who live in cities, but it was a model. Native Americans honor their elders. They value their cultural contributions. They understand the worth of the treasures of experience which they carry under their gray hair, as do other traditional peoples. Women who serve as influential counselors and leaders in certain tribes are not eligible to enter such high and honored posts until after menopause. What a contrast to our media worship of the provocative nubile female frozen in the attitude of early mate attracting and childbearing years. By contrast, those of us who are children, we children of immigrants, people who came to these shores from old country, we looked at our parents and grandparents not as sages, but as sources of ethnic humor and good cooking. We sort of said, what do they know of how to get ahead? In the passage over the Atlantic, much of the ethnic treasure of wisdom and tradition was lost. I met a person who said to me, my issue isn't getting ready to die. My issue is getting the respect I want and deserve. And I offered that by spiritual eldering, one can become the dignified and honor-inspiring elder without having to whine for it. Imagine then that I can say of myself, and mean it, I'm an elder. An elder. An elder is a person who is still growing, still a learner, still with potential, and whose life continues to have within it promise for and connection to the future. An elder is still in pursuit of happiness, joy, and pleasure, and her or his birthright to these remains intact. Moreover, An elder is a person who deserves respect and honor and whose work it is to synthesize wisdom from long life experience and to formulate this into a legacy for future generations. So, how can we learn to synthesize wisdom from life experience? These days, we look for a psychotechnology that works. And we have already a great deal that works for us. There's body work that can take years of our backs, change our posture, give better body tone. We have learned, as my dear partner Eve Wilson reminds me all the time, that certain work with the body encourages and maintains flexibility of mind and clears access to the spirit. We can lower the center of gravity from the head to the key and learn to live in the dignity of the ideal elder who is so in her body that respect and honor from others are a natural result. So much we have learned in the therapeutic modalities. We can clear hidden memories, we can overcome phobias, we can have our inner personalities meet each other in psychodrama and gestalt. We can do life review, we can do journal work, and we can do the hard and difficult work of forgiveness and acceptance. We can do now socialized meditation, interactive meditation. Instead of letting ourselves become depressed by the pain of unlived life, we can turn that vital force that clamors to be recognized to help us amplify our continued growth, our becoming the spiritual, and to become the spiritual elders we are meant to become. What a vista, what a wonderful adventure, what a miraculous window of opportunity. L'chaim, l'chaim to you possible humans on the way to divinization. L'chaim elders to be. To life, l'chaim.
Our program continues with a workshop with Rabbi Zalman, where he explores in greater depth the principles of spiritual eldering.
Now is the time to talk a little bit about the theory and the process of this work that we have called spiritual eldering. But I'd like you to know that if you only do what we are doing here now, like hearing, you won't get infected, and that would be too bad. You'd just be vaccinated. You know what I'm saying? People read a book and they get vaccinated against the ideas that are in the book. They never get caught by it. It's like feeling to them, oh, how nice. You know what a maven is, you know? Well, there's a sickness called Mavinitis. Mavinitis is the sickness when you are such a maven, you know? You dig everything so quick because you're always dealing with it conceptually rather than situationally. If you deal with something situationally, you are in there. We're talking about us right now. But if you are a maven, you start to say, well, let's see, I'm going to go to this presentation. You get that? That's one way to alienate themselves, to push themselves away so that this process won't touch them. So today we're going to talk about it because there certainly isn't time. One of the things an elder knows, that things take real time. Give you an example. If I ask you, do you remember the time when you first became aware of your own mortality? Now, usually this goes scan, find and replace, you put on the computer, runs through the file for you. Then you got, I got it, okay? I caught it. What happens when you have it? For some people, they say, I got it. I was so-and-so, and then they give you right away the description of what it is, as if they were writing a case history about another person. But what would be if you arrive at this place and you live it through in real time again? And it dawns on you what it felt like, with whom you were at that time. So it's real-time work that makes a difference. It isn't merely identifying it quickly up here. It's getting to that place, feeling it through, working it through, and it's real-time work. So if we were to do something on spiritual eldering and really do it, it's real-time work. Let's take a look then at theory. One of the things about theory is every theory has underlying it an act of faith. Okay? I have an act of faith that those things of senescence that come to us when we age are not necessarily a lousy trick that God pulled on us. You know? If I make an act of faith and I say, I believe that for the benefit of who we are and what we have to yet become, it is good for us to have to experience old age. And that gives us a chance to harvest something in life in that time. It gives us a chance to have certain satisfactions that we deserve to have. Because that's what this whole business of harvesting is. Imagine if I only had the work on my children and my grandchildren, and I never had the opportunity of having what we call nachas, that joy, to be present at moments of their victory, their triumph, their overcoming, their empowerment. That's what's so good at going to a bar mitzvah, you know. You see a kid being empowered, getting to do stuff that he couldn't do before he was bar mitzvah, and getting the consent of a whole group to say, go ahead, it's yours now. And this moment of handing over that power, that empowerment, that's harvest for a grandparent. And to be deprived of that is really terrible. Who saw this wonderful movie, Home Alone? Okay, you can admit, more of you can admit it. You took your grandchildren. Let me see, how many saw the movie? Okay, there was this wonderful scene there where first there is this old man, everybody whispers about him, he's terrible, he's terrible, he's terrible. When we find him later on sitting in church, and his granddaughter is up there in the choir, and this little kid who was left behind when the large family left for Paris is sitting there and asking him, what you doing here? He says, I came to hear my granddaughter sing. So he says, why don't you get closer to her? What do you have to do this here? Well, my son and I haven't talked for so and so many years. Remember that? It was a very painful thing. It was so lovely how the kid was telling this old man, hey, come on, don't be stupid. Look what you're missing out. Do you remember what happened when the titles came at the end? It was so marvelous. There you saw him walking with his granddaughter. He was doing some harvesting, okay? This feeling of how important that harvest is, now if you don't get to do that, if you don't permit yourself to do that, no wonder you have the pain of unlived life. So, one of the things to make spiritual eldering work is to create harvest opportunities and to create for people the willingness and skills in harvesting. One of the harvests, therefore, is Catholics have mysteries. There are joyful mysteries and there are sorrowful mysteries. Part of the work of spiritual eldering is to take the rosary of the sorrowful mysteries and turn them into joyful mysteries. Get that? To take all those sad occasions by recontextualizing, finding in them something that was wonderful, what you learned from that, what you got out of that, so that you don't have a load of kvetch, on you, that you're able to make these shifts. That has to do with harvesting. Now, in order to harvest, or to think about harvest at all, I have to get to the place where I make peace with my mortality. And we also know that there's this fantastic conspiracy to say it in every which way, but not to say it outright, The fact is that all of us here, no matter what the witnesses tell you, you remember the witnesses used to say, some of us alive today will never die, remember? Well, is this what we believe? I think we can look around and we can say that most of us feel that the time will come for us. And that is a certain kind of okay. And the more this becomes okay, the less we need to distance ourselves from the blindness. Look, imagine over there is the angel of death. And every day I take another step in this direction. So I walk and I look and I see that's still a while to come. And look how much space I have from here to there. But some of us get so freaked out by what's over there that we can't, and we don't make peace with that. So instead of looking ahead, we start backing into the future. Okay? I don't want to know, I don't want to know, I don't want to know. And so we back into the future. So what do we see? We look at the past. And what do we see when we look at the past? We see our failures. So this is how we find ourselves in the box. In that box, we have to deal with the future and mortality, the past and the painful failures. And while we are in the box, and we hate it being in that box, the worst part of it is that there are many telephones ringing. And we don't want to pick up the telephones. This is a culture where you don't pick up a ringing telephone. What do I mean by that? I have a headache. My body is ringing the telephone. Hey, workaholic, you're at it again. That's what the headache says. So what do? I rip out the telephone. I take double strength pain reliever, so I shouldn't hear the message. So unlived life, our telephones ringing in us, constantly telling us, hey, you haven't done it yet, you haven't done this yet, you haven't done this yet. Parts of us scream because they have been betrayed. How many a time have I said to the playful one inside of me, okay, you wait, the weekend will do it. And what happened at the weekend? I brought work home. Okay? So I never did it. Do you understand? It's almost like a kid pulling at me and saying, hey, you promised, but you promised, you know? So that's on the smaller things. Can you imagine when you didn't follow your bliss, you didn't go in the direction that you felt in your deepest sense? That's the destiny that you had of why you came into this life at all, was to do it. And you muffed it. You missed it because of fear. You missed it because of other people's expectations on you. You missed it. And that voice is clamoring. That gives us a lot of pain in the present. So you see, this is the box in which we are. Spiritual eldering is saying, wait, just let's get out of the box. We have to do something about this box. One of the ways in which our not wanting to face our mortality is that we don't want to look at our time as a lifetime in a way that we can have access to it. So think of it for a moment as if the biblical 7 years, every 7 years. Figure now that the Waldorf schools, for instance, aren't going to let the kids study mathematics until their second teeth come in. Do you see how wise that is? Instead of talking about schools and curricula, they talk about an organism unfolding. So January is the first 7 years. February is when puberty starts coming. Think of the end of March. End of March as a time when you're now 21 and you have all those things that you get at that time. And the winter months are over, and now starts the spring. By April, you're 28, and you have your Saturn return. And you start figuring out, dropping off a lot of stuff, cleaning house, as it were, and moving on to 35 in May, to 42 in June, by which time all the learning and establishing a family and the social persona, all this is done. Okay? Then, the time when we do our magnum opus is July, August, and September. That's when we grow all the crops. And then when it gets to October, November, and December, this is that time that we are now talking about. And if you were to ask someone, what is it that you do during those years? They say, you're retired. And when you're retired, what are you retired for? Not from, okay? Most of us get retired, pulled away, retiré, from something, from the work that meant something to us. But this time we get a chance to be able to retire too. And what's that too that we want to do? We want to do some life review. We want to go back in time. The truth of the matter is that time is not linear. Time is not linear. Let me just tell you, I want to unmask a big, big racketeer. The racketeer is commodity time. Commodity time is what makes you think in the middle of the night it's day because you have fluorescent light. Commodity time is what has a thermostat, so you never feel summer or winter. Do you understand what I'm saying? It so homogenizes time so that it should fit the industrial military complex, into chunks. You buy time. Well, if you buy my time, you better buy morning time. But if you get evening time from me, you don't get a bargain. Do you understand? Because they're tides to consciousness and tides to the way in which the body goes. And that's very important to know. But that's organic time, do you see? Organic time is summer and winter. Organic time is morning and evening. Organic time is feeling, even in our blood, if the ocean has a high tide and a low tide. And I have ocean. I'm an ocean creature inside of me. Blood is ocean. Does not the moon have something to do with that? Aren't there tides? Aren't there cycles? Isn't there something going on? So that's organic time. But when they are saying you got to be there at such and such a time, they're pushing us onto calendar time, to commodity time. The first thing that someone who retires can do is begin to live organic time. To be able to say, I'm out of Egypt, I'm now freed. I don't have to do this because it's on the calendar for tomorrow. That sense of being so much in touch with what is doing. So that's really very important. But once you know that, then comes the question, wait a minute, but what was and can't be altered. That's how we usually say it, right? That was last time, you can't go back and do anything, you can't fix it, because when you think of time as linear, there is no way back in time. A bit of Kabbalah. There is this plane, the plane of the world of action. Then there's a plane that's the plane of the world of feeling. Then there is a plane that's the plane of the world of mind, of the intellect. And then there's a plane that's the plane of spirit. Those of you who know it from the yogas know it as Hatha and Karma Yoga, as Bhakti Yoga, as Jnana Yoga, and as Raja Yoga. So there are these four levels. When you are in the level of action, it may be that the antecedent act and the act that comes later on, the following act, have a relationship of cause and effect to them. And they are linear, or they're more linear. But when it comes to the realm of feeling, time is no longer a line. Time now happens to be a plane. Do you understand? Time now has two dimensions. By the time you get to the world of mind, time has three dimensions. By the time you get to spirit, time has four dimensions. And each time you understand that when you move to a higher level, there loops can be made. You can reach back. This isn't science fiction, okay? This is spiritual know-how. This is also psychological, this transpersonal know-how. Gestalt knows it, that on the level, on the plane of feeling, you can reach back to where you were before, and what didn't go so well, you can fix. Okay? We can reach back a lot into fixing things. This is so important because what we are being most judged on in our, not by others, mind you, by ourselves, in our eldering is the nobility and the art, the life craft. You know, did you do it like a schmigig? Or did you do it like an artist? Do you know what I'm saying? Does your life have a certain artistic texture to it? Or is it just sort of a drab kind of a thing? Did you not try and make it something noble, something beautiful? Okay? So that part allows us to reach back and to fix some things. And in the place, why does psychotherapy work? Because I can reach back to a place where there was a big ouch, and I can do something about this ouch. And when I take care of that ouch, then, there, now, I get straightened up. I have a, oh, how good it is to be rid of that pain. That was a bummer I was carrying with me all my life. Take forgiveness, yeah? Someone came and asked me, I have a real issue here. I was betrayed. I find it very hard to forgive. When we do the spiritual eldering workshops, that's what takes a lot of time for people. Because somehow our vindictiveness gets anchored in that bad time that we had there, and it doesn't let us move away from that. And we become like the warden in jail. The warden in jail has to spend as much time in jail as a prisoner has, you know? When you are angry with someone, when you have not forgiven, the amount of time that you spend in jail, as it were, holding the other one in jail, what a waste. What a waste. So learning how to unhook means reaching back into the past. One way to do it is to do it with life review, to go and take chunks of time and looking at them again. And I want to say that one of the good ways in which to do it is not solo. One of the greatest benefits of a warm relationship, of a couple relationship, is the possibility that the two of them have to process life with each other, you know? To be able to go over things and to start saying, well, what was this like for you? And can you witness when I'm doing my inner work? The same in therapy, you know? You get someone to witness your process. And so I want to say that one of the great benefits of people who have done this spiritual eldering work with us was that they came away and said, I found that I could have spiritual intimacy with people. And spiritual intimacy has much less bad karma attached to it. Okay? The truth of the matter is that that's what we look for most of the time anyway. We are willing to have intimacy on other levels so to get a little bit of that one. You know what I'm saying? So, when you meet other people and you can do some of this life review work with friends who will give you safe and sacred space. In other words, this is going to be special time. This is going to be what we talk about here, we don't gossip about, you know? And a deep kind of sharing. And to be able to, listen, this work is with a lot of warts, you know? This is not how to impress people. I need a friend that I don't have to impress, so I should be able to look at my warts with their witness of that. So this is where the life review is, to be able to go back in time. And unlived life, work not done, is what bugs us a lot. If we feel that we need to do it and we haven't done it, it feels very bad.
This concludes Side A. Please turn the tape over for Side B.
Now look at the next word, contemplate. Contemplate. Template, you know what a template is. Well, when we talk about RNA, you know, that stuff that gets our DNA and RNA, that stuff that keeps our bodies on course, that makes us have who we are, that keeps our genetic identity, that stuff is a template, okay? It's that which keeps organizing all the biomaterial so that you should have your identity, okay? Many of us have a template inside that was introjected by people who were saying they called you names. Sometimes a parent giving you hot potatoes, and you take them into yourself, and they're still sitting in your craw, and you haven't been able to think of yourself in good terms because the template, you allowed somebody else to mess with the template of your being. Part of this eldering work is to examine that template and to change its contours. To say, up to now, perhaps, I didn't have the time, the energy, other things were important to me. But now I have the time, the energy to start asking myself, is this who I want to, is this the picture? You know, remember the picture of Dorian Gray? If he could have looked at that picture each day to see that cruel line on the face, do I want to have that? Or do I want to eliminate it? Someone said, up to 35, your parents made your face. From 35 on, you made a face yourself, right? So it's that part that has to do with shifting that template. And this work is inner work. This is not work on the outside. Our bodies want us to do this work, and that's why we spend time in this more sedentary way. We want to sit and we want to contemplate. And there are arts, contemplative arts. And so this is again one of the reasons why we call this spiritual eldering, because the tools are the tools of contemplation. I want to talk about soul. There is an identity that comes to us from the way in which we advertise ourselves. In psychology, people talked about it as the presentation of self, which was like this cartoon guy, he's walking down, and over here there is this balloon, and the balloon says, that's who I am, yeah? And Ramdas once did a wonderful way of, making what's the word I'm looking for? A caricature of that, of the way in which we advertise, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is who I am, that's what I do, and so on. If I were to do an exercise with you in which I would say, who are you? And you would give me an answer. And I would say, thank you, who are you? And you give me the second answer. And I say, thank you, who are you? And I keep on asking deeper and deeper and deeper, and each time another veil falls off. Each time, it's not that I'm arguing with you, I'm not saying you are not that, I say thank you, that's true. Who are you? Thank you. Who are you? And still going deeper and deeper. Then we get to a place where we get fantastically anxious. It almost feels like the next who are you that I'm going to answer is going to devastate me, is going to embarrass me, or is going to kill me. Some years ago, I had first come to the University of Manitoba. And we were having some labs with our kids on meditation. There was a colleague in another congregation who called the people of my board of directors and said, you got to get rid of this menace, Shakhtar. Why? because he's teaching the kids to meditate. Don't you know you can go crazy from meditation? He was right. He was right, because I'm talking about just that, that closed thing. When sometimes you talk to a schizophrenic, and they tell you about their inner reality, what that's like, and you feel more and more anxious. You feel if you take one more step with that person, it's also going to swallow you, and you don't want to be swallowed by that worldview. Do you know what I'm getting at? So there is this deep anxiety if somebody says, "Who are you?" and you say, "Thank you," and "Who are you?" and you get closer and closer, that sooner or later you're going to blurt out and say, "God." A friend of mine was telling me about this couple. They brought home a new baby from the hospital, and the little kid, 2-year-old, wanted to go and talk to the brother or sister, whatever it was, and they had that little intercom so they could hear the child. And here's what they heard the 2-year-old saying to the new baby: "Please tell me about God. I'm beginning to forget." Now, what did this do inside of you when you heard this story? Do you know what I'm saying? It's that stuff, touching that stuff, that is so amazing, so wonderful. Because we know there is a truth in there, and we don't dare to talk about this because we are afraid somebody's going to come. The insurance companies are going to present a bill for all the acts of God. You know what I'm saying? They're going to ask you, then why did you allow the Holocaust and stuff like that? That's not where the issue is. The issue is we do have an identity. Who is the one that incarnates in us? Okay? So when people used to say, what is a soul? A soul is a chip off the old block, a spark of the very living God. And how do you say it today? We are a snip of the great hologram. Okay? That sense of the total reality that is one, and we are a part of that total reality that's one. And when you get deep down and you start asking this question, who are you, who are you? You ask it yourself, who am I? And behind all this, and Ramdas took us there today when he said, into that which is timeless. That which has no space, yes? That which is underneath the awareness. That is what sees when one sees and what hears when one hears. Okay? That's even found in the book of Psalms. There it says, Binu barim ba'am uchsilim matai taskilu. Wake up, pay attention. The one who plants an ear, does that one not hear? The one who gives you an eye, does that one not see? The one who reproves nations, will he not require of you? The one who gives you consciousness, is that one not conscious? See, when this is reflection, this is the kind of stuff that happens when we start doing this inner work. And we go into meditation, in which we not only ask ourselves, our persona and our body, who we are, but we start asking deeper, who are you, who are you, until we get closer to that identity. So, journal writing is such a wonderful thing. The things that we dare to tell ourselves in a journal, we don't dare to tell other people. So, journal writing, then, is that which we need to do when we want to talk to ourselves. There is a form of prayer that Rabbi Nachman of Braslav advocated for his people, and that is that they should go and seek a quiet hour in which they can just talk to God and pour their heart out in this way. And to be able to say these things, and there's a lot that we can say about how this works, and learn first, because we do a very pretentious job when we first get started with the, fancy language, thee and thou, vouchsafe, bestow, after a while we drop this language and we talk much more from the heart. So this is what happens, that you can write letters to God. You can Do you remember little Thérèse of Lisieux? Her book was called Histoire d'une âme, the history of a soul. She wrote it from the perspective, I, soul, having been incarnated, living this kind of life, am hereby reporting to myself what was going on. So, let's look at models of elder work. How do you feel when someone, imagine for a moment, if I were to say, anybody over 80 should come and sit in the first row over here. Anybody over 70 should come and sit in the second row. Anybody over 60 should sit in the third, fourth, fifth row, okay? And so on and so forth, so that we would get this kind of sociogram over here. Remember how Ramdas was talking about when he was 60 and about the story with the ticket. It was so beautiful. He wanted to be challenged. Come on! The vanity almost wanted to say, hey, come on. At least somebody should say, no, it can't be that you're 60. Can't you? You know? At the same time, how to be in the body and how to receive that kind of dignity. How to receive kavod, the honor. How to be taken, not lightly. The word dignity has with itself, something of a lowered center of gravity. Anybody know Sasaki Roshi in Los Angeles? A wonderful Zen master. When he walks, his center of gravity is a foot below the floor. Can you imagine that? Yes? That's how he is in his body. And most of us haven't yet learned how to be in our body in that way. So if we were to give you the honor due to you as an elder, the likelihood is you'd feel a little squeamish at first. Don't make fuss of me, this kind of stuff. Could you imagine when you learn to receive it? When you learn to receive it. Do you think it's selfish? It feels at first selfish. Come on, I should take this in, what people give me, it's not so nice, I should be more humble. Get that? I shouldn't want to receive this stuff. But you know what? There is a reciprocal situation going on. Haven't you looked for someone that you could give respect to? That you could make a deposit and say, oh, I really wish I had somebody to go to in that way and to talk to in that way. And I see this when people go to the Native Americans, to their elders. Even I had this wonderful opportunity of being at a Sundance. And there was this man, he was just sitting on one of those folding chairs with his cowboy hat on, while the braves were dancing with the flesh pierced and fasting for 4 days, total fast. And every once in a while, they needed to find something out about how do you do the next thing. And they'd come over to him and he would just sit and watch the whole business, and someone would say to him, whatever. He would listen, and then he would give a word or two, and they'd go back and continue the ceremony. That man, sitting there, carried in himself a dignity that he had given to some other people before. Do you understand what I'm saying? He wasn't the first one to receive it. He had given it to somebody else. He could receive it then, and he knew that he was doing the next generation a favor by receiving them and modeling for them how to be an elder. I was so touched when one of the braves came over to him for one of those consultations, and he whispered to him and pointed to me, and then had that man invite me to be a pipe carrier for the next thing. You understand? It was kind of a recognition, I recognize you, elder to elder. Pir Vilayat Khan and I spent some time at the Sinai. And there, this was an amazing experience. And there, we were also with some elders, Muslim elders. Do you know, we were able to get along with each other so beautifully. Because we, you know, I would have the feeling that if our elders rather, you know, than the young folks would do the negotiations about peace in the Middle East, and they would do it with that kind of recognition that they give to each other, what a difference it would make, you know. So the hotheads, the young folks, maybe they have another task to do, but we really need that power of elders. And do you know, we used to have this wonderful custom among Jews that when the last wedding, the last child was married off, and the nest was empty, then we would sing, "Dem is Inke euch gegeben, dem is Inke euch gegeben." You would take a sort of a paper crown and crown that mother with, and you dance with her and say, "Your childbearing and child-carrying years are over, now you're free, and with all the honor and dignity that we want to give you for that, you're an elder now." See, this sense of, if a finishing school teaches a model how to walk, our eldering stuff needs to teach us how to be in our body in such a way so that the respect that we want is something that we can get. Mentoring. Shlomo Karlebach, do you know that name? He's such a wonderful buddy. Shlomo once told the following thing. He was talking to a group of people and said, "Imagine I told you a story. And I go on with the story and go on with the story and go on with the story, and it's not your story. After a while, you, leave me alone already. What do I need all these stories for?" But what happens when someone tells you a story, and the more you hear it, the more you recognize it's your story? Instead of falling asleep, you wake up. My daughter once asked me this question when she was young. She said, "Abba, when you're asleep, you can wake up. Isn't that true?" "Yes," I said, and I expected the next one. And she said, "Well, when you're awake, can you wake up even more?" Do you understand? This is the way children, they're such wonderful souls coming in, you know. I think they're coming in to rescue us rather than that if we don't spoil things for them, I think they'll have a great world. So that's what I want to say about mentoring too. That the kinds of questions, the kind of unexpected questions that somebody can ask you this way. Children are so wonderful. Once I was talking to an assembly of kids in Hebrew school, and I asked them, "Well, what would you want to ask of God if you could?" And one little one raised his hand and they said, "I would like to ask him, why is it that when we live, we have to die? And why is it that we have to do things with metal and with pieces of paper?" He meant coins, and with money. "Can't we just give and share?" Do you understand? When being present to that innocence and the way so something gets aroused in us too, and this is a rejuvenation. It's just marvelous. The best mentoring. When I was at the university, at Temple University, you know, every year you have to write a dean's report. How many hours you spent doing this? How many hours you spent doing that? So there was no category for it. So I wrote on the questionnaire a new category. Ear. Yeah. The amount of ear time I spend with students, you know. And I found out that ear time is what got the students to wake up, to integrate what they were learning. Because they were able to tell me their insight, you know, without me. Just being present to their talking shifted the way in which they talked about things. So don't think that mentoring is only what you tell them, okay? Mentoring very often exists in being present to someone who talks to you. And notice how there is always in this talking, it doesn't go the same way. It just keeps shifting and shifting and shifting until it adjusts, because it isn't something, talking isn't something one does at the other. Talking is, like Thich Nhat Hanh talks about it, interbeing.
Right now I'm intertalking with you, okay? Your ears, your nods, your eye signals that you give me, the eye contact that we have. Even when you say, speak a little bit louder, yes, we are interdoing this, we are sharing this thing. And so, there is mentoring going on when you're just present to someone of a younger generation. And their energy exchanges too. They energize you and they give them wisdom. And most of us are lacking grandparent time. Could you imagine what it was like if when we lived under one roof, 3-4 generations? I always had an ally in grandfather, okay? Remember this beautiful movie, Lies My Father Told Me? Yeah? The grandfather and the grandchild. What a wonderful, deep relationship they had, because the intermediate generation was the enemy, you know? The Oedipal enemy is my father. My father's Oedipal enemy is his father. His father and I are such wonderful allies. And this is where values could be given from one generation to the other without having to go through the process of being rejected. This is what traditions were able to do, and we don't have that anymore because our social mobility loused us up that way. So if there is an opportunity, if you become the kind of elder that you aspire to become, people will want you to, would you mentor my children? Can you imagine sort of a rent-a-zayde, you know? Rent a grandfather, rent a grandmother, that kind of thing, or rent an enkel, rent a grandchild, you know? If you can't be with your own grandchild, rent a grandchild. Love the one you're with, yeah? Okay? Legacies. One of the things we want to make sure is that we can leave something behind. And this which we want to leave behind, we used to have a beautiful thing that was called ethical wills. People would write out the distillate of their experience in life in a letter for their children. There are some of these that are found in the back of the book of Psalms, Igeret Haramban, Savat, etc., the letters that parents have written to their children that the children might reread them and remain aware, remain conscious. What can I leave you that is more lasting than anything else? It's that kind of a legacy. So people write living wills, and part of the work that we do in spiritual eldering is just that. There are times when children are waiting to, you know, sometimes we have the time, we do this custom, it's a beautiful custom, Shabbos letters. When you love someone, you write a letter from time to time, a love letter. But when you are together and you live in a family, when was the last time you wrote a love letter to somebody in the family, right? So could you imagine if Sabbath meal is happening and you're sitting on Friday night together, and underneath the plate there is a little billet doux, yeah, a little note, and you can get to pull it out and you read it and you see all the mushy stuff you don't get to say with your mouth written on a piece of paper, and to be able to give this to somebody in this way. These are the wonderful little things that we can do for each other in this work of legacy. Leaving legacy is to say some of the truths to our children. Imagine you want to call somebody up and say, I'm sorry. You really would like to be with that person again. You'd like to at least exchange some words. But the last time you did, which was 20 years ago, you hung up on each other. And since that time, it's been rankling you, and it's been rankling them, and it's been pisser. And you have reached for the telephone more than once and then said, oh no, I can't. What will I say when they say what they say? You know what I'm saying? Reconciliation work needs the role-playing, to try it out on each other. And when you role-play that with each other as part of this work of spiritual eldering, you can make repair in relationships. That's fantastic. Have you ever thought how you would like to have your deathbed? If you had your druthers, who would you like to invite? And who would you say, please, do me a favor? That person, I don't, listen, they would take away from me the initiative from dying too. They would tell me how to do it. Do you know what I'm getting at? What music would you like to hear again if you could? Imagine this is the last couple of hours that you have. What would you like to taste again? What music would you like to hear again? What words would you like to say? How would you like it to be? How would you like to go out? We used to do a lab like this as part of the design of ritual, a deathbed ritual. The kind of presence that can be, the way the midwifery that we can do for each other, the kindness that we can do for each other to hold the hand of a person who's about to go and to be present, you know, without lies. I came to see someone when I was in that synagogue in New Bedford, and the person was dying from leukemia, and they were all talking about when he and I are going to go out fishing together, you know. And I wanted to say something real, and I was young and I didn't know how to do it. I'll tell you about a beautiful case of mentoring. Up in the 180s is the Jewish Theological Seminary. One of my friend's students was a young rabbi to be, and he was training now in chaplaincy. So he made the rounds in a hospital, seeing one after another, and he was also prepared because in the classroom they had worked on what to do with the dying, to help the dying. He comes to one room, and there in that room are about 12.5 black hats. Chassids, you know, with the dark overcoats and black hats, because one of their rabbis, one of their great teachers, is dying. So he comes to the door and gets sort of intimidated and asks them, what's going on here? And they say, who are you? And he says, I'm the chaplain. He's got to be chaplain to our Rebbe. He's got to teach our Rebbe to die. You know. And the master rears from the bed and says, what's going on? And they say, this young schneck from the conservative seminary is coming here. He wants to be doing chaplaincy with the dying. And the Rebbe said, please tell all the Hasidim to leave. I would like to spend this time with this young man. And he begins to ask him and says, I'm dying now. How would you talk to me? What would you like? Do you understand how this person was teaching him in the last bit of his life, you know? That's what I call mentoring. What a gift to give to somebody, to allow them to be there and to tell them, talk to me truth, tell me about this. What do you know, you know? And so I would like us to be able to take the sting out of that. The same way as midwifery in childbirth was able to do the psychoprophylaxis, that's to say, to prepare people. This is what you might expect will happen. This is how it'll proceed, and so on and so forth. And this is how you can collaborate with it to be able to do this for the dying. In my life, I've been geralft and gefeldenkreist, and, you know, I got all kinds of, and gereikit. And at one point, my Feldenkreiser was working on me. And I fell asleep. That's so gentle. It's such a wonderful, gentle way of doing body work and getting awareness and movement that I fell asleep. When I woke up later on, I said to him, Russell, when my time comes, I'd like you to give me my last lesson so I can slip out of the body because you did such a wonderful, wonderful job. You know what he did? He went to Calcutta and spent 3 months with Mother Teresa doing Feldenkrais work with people who were going. Do you understand? We have such a wonderful arsenal. We have so many wonderful things that we can nowadays do. And so look at the opportunities, okay? This is what I would like you to go from here with today. To start saying, we are learning a technology. We are learning how to do certain things. And we are learning how to, now remember, who saw Defending Your Life? Wonderful movie. There in Defending Your Life, remember the guy who was sort of supposed to be his lawyer was saying, you only use 5% of your brain, I use 50% of my brain. I'd like us to become aware that now we can have ways of engaging more of our brain. Why is it that we don't use more of our brain? Let me see, how many of you work on computers? Okay. Most of the brain hasn't been formatted, okay? If you format the brain properly, you will be able to then store and retrieve more data from the hard drive, okay? That's the point I want to make, that we are now getting to the place that we are working on a spiritual technology that's getting into the system files. That's readjusting because we are getting, our CPU is expanding. Did you see the Intel ad? Shows you that if you get a 486, you know, you'll be able to put the coprocessor in when it comes out. This is what's happening to us today. We are getting opportunities of expanding consciousness the way in which we never were able to do it before. And this is why I believe it's going to lead us toward telepathy. When we think, I'll give you an example. In the past, we looked at the ego. Who has a good, intact ego? The one who can best play poker. Do you know what I'm saying? A poker mentality is the one who they have their cards here. And they make a face, and they give you a bum steer with the face, and they don't want you to know what you have here. So they operate, the only advantage you can get from playing poker is having a secret that the other one doesn't know. Okay? And that's the way governments operated, and that's the way firms operated, and so on and so forth. Then came glasnost, and that means transparency, glass-like being. Because you can't anymore keep secrets. Everything is being broadcast. Could you imagine if I were to have a full house, you know, and I want to play poker? But over here my chakras are saying, Zalman has a full house, Zalman has a full house. Because we have all leaky margins. We are not, Gene Houston says, we have leaky margins. We are not self-contained. There is more. Privacy that we have about our mind is a myth. Stuff, you know, like tides going in and out. See what we believed 5 years ago, what we believe right now. You know, there are tides of plausibility that flow through our minds back and forth. So I think we are also on the verge of great developments. And the people who were able to spend the time to do that are the elders. This is how we're going to have those telepathic council of elders. This is how we'll be able to influence world events. This is the way in which we'll be able to beam at a convention who is supposed to be nominated and who is not supposed to be nominated. Do you understand? When I look at this sense of that the best possible recommendation you can get today for being a president is that you're a good actor, right? So you're able to play president for 8 years. When you start thinking about what it takes to be able to be a public servant, you know there's this great revolution going on right now. We look at Congress, we look at all the elected officials, and we don't know whom should we vote for. There's nobody decent to vote for because they aren't mentioned. So the people whom we want to nominate can't get the nomination because they don't have the money to do it with. Our old cosmology is falling apart. A new cosmology is emerging. All the institutions we have are based on the old cosmology. Therefore, they have to wither, they have to fall apart. New institutions, new forms have to emerge. And I think elders are the ones who are able to devote the time, the energy, the focus to do that. In order to do it right, we have to clean up our act, and that has to do with the recontextualizing of our past, going back, cleaning up our karma, doing the karma cleaning while we can, so that we won't have to leave this world with incompletes on our hand and then come back to reincarnation to do the same old stuff that we have been doing now umpteen times. It's time already to move on to better homework the next time around. That's basically the message I want to give to you. So there is a theory that says the ripening and the harvesting is possible. There are the tools that are available to us. There are the processes that we are now in the process of creating. There are books that call to be written. There are group support work that needs to be done. There are people who need to train in the midwifery of doing this work with elders. And this is what the Spiritual Eldering Project is all about. Yes, we'll have questions too. So if you would like to speak, raise your hand. We'll give you the mic. It's a portable mic. You don't need with wires. On this side over there.
I believe that we create our life. And in talking about death, do you believe that we create when we want to die and how we're going to die? Recently, my mom passed on, and I believe that she wanted to create her death, and she died in the manner in which she always said she wanted to die. So, what your answer is?
I don't have an answer for 100%. But you know, the sense is there are some people who are on the verge of dying who are waiting to get permission from their loved ones to be able to do that. I know of such cases. There was a time when I was invited to come to visit a woman who was in a coma in her own home. It's been already weeks that she was in a coma. And her son had me go and pray at her bedside. And I asked the son a question. Tell me, aren't you supposed to get married in about 6 weeks? He said, yes. And I said, I am getting the feeling that your mother is hanging in there because she doesn't want you to postpone your wedding. Can you give her, and you couldn't talk to her, she didn't respond, okay, on the outside. Would you give her your promise that you will not postpone the wedding so she can go? 2 hours later, she was gone. So, do you understand? I think there is more to it. I don't know whether when is it that we do the programming. Native Americans have this wonderful way of saying, it's a beautiful day to live today, it's a good day to die today, I choose to, and then they say what they choose to do. Remember Little Big Chief? There he was singing his death song, and he says, I choose to die, and he was lying down, and it started to rain, and the rain comes, and he says, sometimes it works, and he got up and went home. So sometimes it works. Yeah. Anyone else?
Hi. What tools would you recommend to increase that 5% of the mind on a spiritual level?
Mm-hmm. Give you one of them that's easy to do, and that has to do with time stretching. Most of us have a very short span for keeping a thought, the mind on a thought. I'll give you an example how this works. I begin a sentence, and then I continue to give the sentence, and you are watching and want to see where does the sentence go and when will it end, and you still have to keep the beginning of the sentence in mind because I haven't yet gotten to the end of the sentence, so I'm stretching the whole business until finally I come to the end. Okay? What's happened is that I've made it long. I've stretched the moment long. One of the things of stretching moments long, that's what Tantra is often about, and when you hear how Tantra works, and in sexual Tantra, to stretch the moment long, and in meditation, is to stretch the moment long. One of the ways in which we do that is to offer God our stillness. Some people call it centering prayer. It's that way of non-discursive presentness, which has a way of enlarging the scope. Instead of concentrating to the very narrow, it just dilates mind. Dilated mind is what reaches into other spaces. There's more to be said yet about how to do it. One of them, the other things has to do with how many thoughts can you keep simultaneously in operation. In Kabbalah, we want a prayer to operate at least on 4 levels simultaneously. Can you understand what I'm saying? It's like I'm saying it in words over here. I'm scanning where my feelings are. I'm scanning what my mind has to say. I'm aware of what my spirit wants to say, and I'm doing them all at the same time. Okay? That is now, that's another dilation of mind. So we are talking either in a time dilation or in a level dilation. Does it help you? Okay. There are more such things, and talking about them alone isn't then we would want to spend a day doing some of these things, and you'll see how this changes things. Another thing is being right up at the edge of a thought where I don't know what's going to come next. It's very close to speaking in tongues. And we do this in an interactive way. For instance, I will begin a statement, a sentence, but I won't finish it. And you and I are going to be in a dyad, an interactive dyad. You have to finish the sentence. Then you start a sentence, and I don't know where you're going, but I have to finish the sentence. Do you see what kind of a tuning this does? Paying attention to how energies are being shared between people. That's another way of doing it. One of the best ways I know of reopening new aspects of mind is to change what I call the pickle juice of consciousness. Like imagine consciousness is like tofu, and you put it into a marinade of kvetch, of dissatisfaction, of frustration. So all of mind gets colored by the taste. When you, on the other hand, start shifting that pickle juice to something that's delightful, that's grateful mentality, the whole thing begins to shift. And so we are not at the mercy of it. We can start putting in the marinade for consciousness that we want to have. So that's another thing. And the more we become empowered to do it, each bit of empowerment opens up new areas. Okay, does that help? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, how good and oh, how pleasant it is for brothers and for sisters to dwell as one. I shall dwell in God's house, you shall dwell in God's house, we shall dwell in God's house now and always.
This concludes The Spiritual Elder, How to Enjoy the Harvest of a Lifetime with Rabbi Zalman Schachter-Shalomi. If you would like more information on the Spiritual Eldering Project, please call 215-242-4074 or write The Spiritual Eldering Project, 7318 Germantown Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19119. The Spiritual Elder was recorded at the Conscious Aging Conference, sponsored by the Omega Institute, as part of its new Culture in Transition conference series. The Omega Institute offers workshops with leaders in the fields of health, psychology, aging, the arts, and spiritual understanding at its Lakeside campus in Rhinebeck, New York. For a free catalog of conferences and programs sponsored by Omega Institute, please call 1-800-862-8890. And for additional copies of this recording, or for a complete catalog of transformational audio tapes, please call Sounds True, 1-800-333-9185, or write Sounds True, 735 Walnut Street, Boulder, Colorado, 80302. Thanks for listening.